Now that we got most of my opining out of the way, and I do apologize about that, I'm not going to try to make these two-parters in general. Let me get to the article. I'll let you guys see what you feel about it afterwards, adding only a little bit of my 2 cents here and there, because, again, I feel that they're onto some things, but not everything. In my life, and again, it's anecdotal evidence, I concede to that, but at least I'm willing to admit that. I've often met people who are very much the opposite of what they say they are finding with China having a generation of only children. In fact, when most of these kids were born, is the same year I was born, so go figure. China's one-child rule may mean timid adults. Researchers find kids to be risk-aversive, less trusting of others. Actually, I think I have more of an opine about this than I thought, so let me read this and then I'll get into my angle of things. They're called little emperors, the children born in China under a law that generally limits urban families to having just one child. Again, I've spoke about this in my last video. I think it should be across the board and not just simply urban children. I'm also going to say that I'm probably willing to concede to some of what this article says, which is why I would say in the States we would limit it to 2 at the most and cut it off there. There's no need to have 13 children families. I'm sorry. Anyways. So, how does growing up as the sole focus of doting parents affect them? Researchers have new evidence that these children are less trusting, less competitive, more pessimistic, less conscientious, and more risk-averse than people born before the policy was implemented in 1979. The study's authors say that one-child policy has significant ramifications for Chinese society, leading to less risk-taking in the labor market and possibly fewer entrepreneurs. Well, if you ask some people on the net who are staunch capitalists, they would say, where's the problem? Look at Foxconn. They're making money hand over fist, violating people's personal freedoms as well as labor laws to get disgusting amounts of consoles and Apple iPods and all the stuff that we tend to love in this modern day and age assembled and out the door, and damn the consequences of overworking and underpaying their people. Us coming there and setting up an economy, maybe that has had a major effect on people taking less risks in markets and in labor, and because what kind of how do I say this? Why would they need, if we're pouring this money into their country and raising their standards of living by setting up their economy, first with slave labor as the model is supposed to go, and then raising their standard of living and doing less human rights violations of their labor force over there, only that's not likely to happen, because if they become the same economy we are, then their economy will be abandoned for newer markets to be set up in other poor countries where they can get away with, again, making slave labor products at base bottom prices and jacking up the cost of the machines and then crying that they're making these machines at a loss. Tear. Anyways, also, I've met many of these overachieving single kids who can be broken kids, but non-risk takers, not entrepreneurs, probably less trusting does fit into that. But I've met these guys who think that they are the cock of the walk, that the world literally revolves around them because that's the kind of world that they're used to. Some of them actually do go on to be successful entrepreneurs, albeit while being giant douches, but they far succeed at times some people who have had more siblings than just themselves. And, well, I mean, obviously siblings are... So there's at least some evidence, at least in this country, of people that we've known who've been only children who do tend to be much more outgoing, more out there, and doing things to the max and succeeding at times more than some of us who didn't grow up originally as single kids. Although I have an interesting anecdotal twist to this myself, but we'll get to that. 2 takes. Trust is really important, not just social interaction, but in terms of negotiation in business, working with colleagues in business, negotiating between firms, says one of the authors from the Australian Monash University. If we lower levels of trust, that could make this kind of negotiation and interaction more difficult. Conversely, though, only children in Chinese families are loved and given almost everything by their families, and they can get resources at home without competition, says a Beijing professor not involved in this study. Once they enter society, they are no different from other people. Having been overly protected, they feel a sense of loss and show less competitiveness. 2 takes, one of which is from China, and I'm sure people will throw that one out because screw China, right? I have 2 brothers. My oldest brother has not lived with me most of my life. He used to visit, and when my older brother was still alive, he was a very fun person, and I liked him being around. Unfortunately, he has cancer now. He was a very big bully to me after my brother died, and part of that may have been his grieving process, but the thing is, he has it in for me. He thinks I get more since I've been with Mother longer, when the truth is actually the reverse of that, but that's a whole nother kit and caboodle. I became an only child for most of my life, especially when we moved away from, or at least, excuse me, not most of my life, from age 12 on. I'm 30 now, so nearly half my life has been spent, or actually over half my life has been spent as a single child. My mistrust of people came from the fact that I was treated like absolute crap by an entire, and I'm not exaggerating, an entire community who just didn't like me. People who would pretend to be my friend one minute and then betray me to be with the in crowd the next. And no, I'm not joking about this. But I have a big heart. I eventually broke out of that when I was in California, and I started trusting people, and for the most part, I wasn't betrayed by that, and I liked that. I gained friends. I gained a lot. Was I a risk taker, though? No. No, I was because my self-esteem, I was broken. And I was afraid of everything because I was made to feel like everything in my 1980s through 1990s world was out to hurt, kill, or maim me. That at any moment I could be taken by a stranger into the woods and raped, despite the fact that that never happened to me or any of my friends. Despite the fact, again, that we were in some of the most remote places in Colorado, where if somebody wanted to get to us, they could, and we wouldn't be found for days, if that. And it never happened. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I'm just saying that sensationalism has turned this into... But again, I had outside influences that made me as such, and my self-esteem was not one that I felt confident enough to take steps to to do things. Now, you can say, well, yeah, but you weren't an only child most of your life. Well, yeah. And I fought with my brother until we were having to stencil our initials on our toys because we couldn't share, because we were douchebags, having to deal with a really bad situation in our lifetime. But I outgrew that stuff. I've become more outgoing. And that's helped me in things like exploring my sexuality, which that's a whole nother kit and caboodle, and doesn't have a bearing on this. And I've come out of my shell, and I've learned, and I've flourished, and I'm looking at starting my own business at some point. Now, am I starting my own business to actually create something magnificent? No. Most likely it's going to be a design firm kind of thing where I'm going to be trying to compete in a very heavily saturated market, things of this nature. But I want to work as my own boss. I want to be able to do things on, for my clients, but have nobody above me trying to force me into things that I know are not good decisions, and then being yelled at when the design fails because the client would have liked what I was doing in the first place. I've been a go-getter. I've grown into these sorts of things, and again, it's anecdotal evidence, but there's many factors here, none of which happen to do with whether I had, all of the affection paid on me or none of the affection paid on me, or have it divided amongst things here. I am willing to concede maybe two-parent families are a better idea, and definitely don't discriminate and just simply say, oh, you're an urban family? Well, you don't get to breed as much as the non-urban people. That's stupid. But, again, China has had the balls to make the choices that we don't seem willing to make. Now, is it having truly adverse conditions? That's hard to say. Their control seems to be, if you can call it that, any kid born before the birth laws of 1979. And I have some problems with that, as I think most people should have problems with this kind of study. But again, more research is needed, and if it does turn out that they are absolutely right, well then fine, let's fix this. I'm not one to stand in the way of good data and not wish to present it in a way that could help out.